Welcome everyone. Join us today as we explore the life and career of Steve Winwood, the voice behind the Spencer Davis Group, Traffic, Blind Faith, and global solo hits like Higher Love and Roll With It. So let's dive in. Stephen Lawrence Winwood, born the 12th of May 1948, in Handsworth, Birmingham, England. Born and raised in a household where music functioned as everyday work rather than distant ambition, his father Lawrence was a semi-professional musician who played piano and saxophone. From early childhood, Steve was surrounded by instruments, rehearsals, and live performance as part of daily life. Music was not something he later turned toward, it was present from the outset. His older brother Muff followed the same path, already active as a working bass player while Steve was still at school, and would later establish a significant career as a producer and A&R executive, most notably with Island Records. Together, the Winwood brothers learned music through use, rather than instruction, growing up with a practical understanding of how bands functioned, how musicians supported touring acts, and how live performance was sustained night after night. Steve attended Great Bar School, but his musical education ran parallel to his formal schooling. While still a pupil, he became deeply involved in Birmingham's expanding blues rock circuit, playing Hammond C3 organ and guitar in clubs and music halls across the city. During the early 1960s, American blues and rhythm and blues artists frequently toured the United Kingdom without backing bands, relying instead on local pickup musicians. In that environment, the teenage Steve found himself backing visiting performers including Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, Chuck Berry, and Bo Diddley. These were not showcase appearances but working engagements that demanded adaptability, discipline, and authority well beyond his age. At the time, Steve was living on Atlantic Road in Kingstanding, close to the Birmingham venues where many of these performances took place. His singing style developed directly from this environment and was strongly influenced by Ray Charles, whose phrasing and rhythmic delivery became a clear reference point. Even before national exposure, Steve's voice drew attention for its maturity and control, often surprising audiences unfamiliar with his age. In 1963, still only 15, Steve, then billed as Stevie Winwood, became the singer and keyboard player for the Spencer Davis Group. The band consisted of Spencer Davis on guitar, Pete York on drums, and brother Muff on bass. Davis had first noticed the Winwood brothers after seeing him perform as the Muffy Wood Jazz Band at the Golden Eagle in Birmingham. The Spencer Davis Group made their debut at the Golden Eagle and soon secured a Monday night residency there, placing them at the center of Birmingham's live music scene. By 1965, the group had signed a recording contract and released their debut album, their first LP. While the album established them within the British beat and R&B movement, it was the run of singles that followed which transformed their standing almost overnight. Late that year, Keep On Running reached number 1 on the UK singles chart, giving the band their first major breakthrough. The success was repeated in early 1966 with Somebody Help Me, another chart topper that firmly established them at the forefront of British pop. The momentum continued through the second album, and Autumn '66, supported by extensive touring. In October 1966, Gimme Some Lovin' was released, written by Steve with Spencer Davis and Muff. The record became one of the defining singles of the decade, achieving major success in both Britain and the United States and establishing Steve internationally as both a singer and songwriter. In January 1967, the group followed with I'm a Man, co-written by Steve and producer Jimmy Miller, further reinforcing his growing creative authority within the band. Alongside his work with the Spencer Davis Group, Steve had already become part of London's wider recording community. In 1966, he guested alongside Eric Clapton in a temporary studio project known as Eric Clapton and the Powerhouse. 3 tracks from those sessions were later released on the various artists' compilation What's Shaking, placing Steve within the interconnected British blues rock studio network of the period. Despite sustained commercial success, by early 1967, Steve had begun to feel constrained by the Spencer Davis Group structure, and craved a more creative direction. In April 1967, at the height of the band's popularity, he left the group. Around the same time, Steve had begun forging new musical connections within Birmingham's club scene. Jam sessions at the Elbow Room in Aston brought him into contact with drummer Jim Capaldi, guitarist Dave Mason, and multi-instrumentalist Chris Wood. These informal encounters soon evolved into something more deliberate. Later in 1967, the four formed Traffic, intentionally distancing themselves from the pressures of the pop marketplace by withdrawing to a rural cottage to write and rehearse without deadlines. Traffic's debut album, Mr. Fantasy, released in December 1967, marked a clear break from the hit-driven format of Steve's earlier career. Songs such as Dear Mr. Fantasy reflected a shift toward a more exploratory, album-focused approach, repositioning Steve at the center of a band shaped for the emerging album era, rather than the singles charts. As Traffic developed through the late 1960s, Steve's role within the wider British blues rock scene continued to expand. In 1968, he was recruited by Jimi Hendrix to play organ on Voodoo Child for the album Electric Ladyland. The session placed Steve among the core musicians shaping late 1960s electric blues and psychedelic rock, and further reinforced his reputation as a dependable and expressive studio player. By 1969, Traffic entered a period of instability, and Steve temporarily stepped away. That pause led directly into the formation of Blind Faith, with Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, and bassist Rick Gregg. The group debuted publicly at a free concert in Hyde Park and released a self-titled album that topped charts in both the United Kingdom and the United States. Despite the album's success, Blind Faith proved unstable almost from the outset. During the American tour, Clapton became increasingly disengaged from the group, and more interested in Blind Faith's opening act, Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. At the conclusion of the tour, Clapton left Blind Faith, effectively bringing the project to an end later in 1969. Following the collapse of Blind Faith, Steve returned to Traffic, reuniting with Jim Capaldi and Chris Wood. This reformed version of the band entered its most stable and productive phase. In 1970, Traffic released John Barleycorn Must Die, followed in 1971 by The Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys, which became the band's most commercially successful album in the United States. These releases established Traffic as a major album-era band, particularly within the FM radio landscape, and were supported by extensive touring. Traffic continued to record into the mid-1970s with albums including Shootout at the Fantasy Factory and When the Eagle Flies. However, the physical demands of sustained touring, musical differences, and ongoing health issues, with Steve still suffering recurrent problems with peritonitis, gradually took their toll, and by 1974 Traffic had effectively come to an end. The latter half of the 1970s marked a transitional period. Steve continued working as a sought-after collaborator and session musician, including his involvement with artists Stomu Yamashita's Go Project, Robert Palmer's Sneaking Sally Through the Alley, George Harrison's self-titled album, and synthesizer on Marianne Faithfull's Broken English, just to name a few. In 1977, he released his self-titled solo debut, Steve Winwood, formally establishing his independent recording career. The decisive turning point in his solo career arrived in 1980 with the release of ArcOfADiver, recorded largely by Steve himself. The album's success, driven by the single While You See a Chance, repositioned him within the contemporary music landscape. This was followed in 1982 by Talking Back to the Night, which included Valerie. In 1986, Steve released Back in the High Life, recorded largely in New York and produced with Russ Titelman. Led by the single Higher Love, which reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and earned Grammy Awards including Record of the Year, and Best Male Pop Vocal Performance, the album marked the commercial peak of his solo career. He consolidated this success in 1988 with Roll With It, whose title track and album both topped US charts. In 1990, Refugees of the Heart followed, closing the most commercially concentrated phase of his career. In 1995, Steve recorded Reach for the Light for the animated feature film Balto, marking a rare soundtrack contribution during this period. His final album for Virgin Records, Junction 7, was released in 1997 and reached the UK Top 40. Later that year, he toured the United States in support of the album and appeared at the VH1 Honors, performing with Shaka Khan. In 1998, Steve joined Tito Puente, Arturo Sandoval, Ed Calais, and other musicians in a short-lived ensemble known as Latin Crossings. The group toured Europe but disbanded without releasing any recordings. That same year, he appeared in the film Blues Brothers 2000 as a member of the Louisiana Gator Boys, performing alongside Isaac Hayes, Eric Clapton, and Coco Taylor during the film's climactic battle of the bands sequence. In 1994, Steve had reunited with Jim Capaldi for a reformed version of Traffic, releasing Far From Home, and touring the United States, including an appearance at Woodstock '94. Recognition of Traffic's legacy followed in 2004, when the band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In May 2007, Steve performed at Highclere Castle in support of the Countryside Alliance, joined by Eric Clapton, Brian Ferry, Steve Harley, and Kenny Jones. 2 months later, he appeared with Clapton at the Crossroads Guitar Festival. A major late career chapter opened in 2008 through his renewed collaboration with Clapton, culminating in the Madison Square Garden concerts and the live album Live from Madison Square Garden. In March 2012, he was among the special guest performers at Roger Daltrey's An Evening with Roger Daltrey and Friends at the Royal Albert Hall in aid of the Teenage Cancer Trust. Entering the 2010s, Steve remained active through touring and selected public appearances. In 2013, he toured North America with Rod Stewart, followed in 2014 by a tour with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. In February 2020, he participated in a tribute concert honoring Ginger Baker at London's Eventum Apollo. In 2023, he performed Higher Love at the Coronation Concert at Windsor Castle, and in 2024 he joined the Doobie Brothers as a special guest on their North American tour. In 2025, Winwood was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire in the King's Birthday Honours, cited for services to music. On a personal note, away from the stage, Steve has maintained a largely private personal life. In 1978 he married Nicole Weir, who sang backup on his records, but the marriage later ended in divorce in 1986. In 1987, he married Eugenia Crafton, who is originally from Tennessee. Together they have 4 children, Mary Claire, Lily, Cal, and Eliza. Mary Claire later married Ben Elliott, and they have 2 sons. Steve divides his time between a historic manor house in the Cotswolds, England, which includes his recording facilities, and also in Nashville, Tennessee. Across more than 6 decades, Steve Winwood's career has spanned every major phase of modern popular music. His work has remained grounded in musicianship, groove, and precision rather than image or trend. Still an active live performer, Steve completed a major solo tour across North America in the fall of 2025, his first headlining run in several years, confirming that his career continues well beyond legacy alone. And there you have it. From the Spencer Davis Group and Traffic, to Blind Faith and a hugely successful solo career, Steve Winwood remains one of the most respected and enduring figures in popular music, an artist whose work continues to be discovered, celebrated, and deeply loved by fans to this very day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on your favorite artists, just like this. Take care and bye for now.